Oh, why did Sylas travel to Freljord? Freljord. Also, what was that? What was it Demacian city, which was like super winter? It looked like Freljord, but yeah. All right, let's go into Sylas.
In our last video, I mentioned that in 2019, Sylas was the best addition to the world of League of Legends.
Yes.
His arrival set up an incredibly good story that hasn't stopped moving forward to this day. And let me remind you that Sylas has been around for a year now. In his latest story, after Sylas managed to escape the Demacian prison, and after his mage revolution accidentally killed King Jarvan III, Sylas decided to venture north, where the next chapter of the Demacian storyline begins. And because it is not the shortest story, let's get right into it.
Let us.
The story begins by introducing two new characters. Thorva, sister of Frost, who is riding a Druvask boar, just like Sejuani, and Scar Mother Vrina of Winter's Claw, whom you may remember from Legends of Runeterra. Even though Vrina was a respected, ruthless veteran with a bloody history, Thorva wasn't awed by her presence. Although Thorva's name wasn't as well known across Freljord, she was a shamanka, one who dreamed the
shamanka.
Of the old gods. And even
shaman.
The powerful matriarchs in the Freljord were
shamanka means female shaman, okay? Like shamanka. It's like in Russian, you just add ka to anything and it's like becomes either an endearing word or like a female name, so yeah.
Wise to respect the old faith. After a day of marching east towards the Avarosan territory, the Winter's Claw raid finally took a break to stretch.
Obviously there are exceptions, but yeah.
Thorva sensed a storm coming, but Vrina didn't respond to her warning. Instead, she continued staring south with her one good eye. Vrina mentioned something in the distance, but when Thorva joined her, she couldn't see anything. Vrina mocked her that even though Thorva had two eyes, she was more blind than Vrina. This interaction ignited deep hatred in Thorva, revealing that she was quick to anger, and she forced herself to take a deep breath to calm down. Here the story revealed that Thorva joined the raid party uninvited. Initially, Vrina protested against her, but with her connection to the old gods of...
Buddy, look at these, first of all, damn. Also, damn? What the fuck?
Freljord, the shamanka clearly had a reason to come as well. But to that moment, Vrina still didn't know why the gods wanted Thorva to join them. Vrina pointed at a rocky cliff in the distance, and Thorva finally saw as well. There was a lone figure, little more than a shadow against the snow. An itching sensation prickled the back of Thorva's neck, and she sensed there was something strange about that figure. Vrina knew it couldn't be an Avarosan scout, because they marched right through the icy winds. Not even a child of Freljord would make that mistake. The only other option was that it was a trader from the south. After all, the Avarosans traded with the Southerners instead of taking from them. After that realization, Vrina simply turned her Druvask around so they could keep going.
Okay.
But Thorva stayed behind. She mentioned that they might have been spotted, but Vrina replied that this fool won't survive the coming storm anyway.
I'm assuming the fool was Sylas.
It didn't make Thorva's itching sensation go away. And so, when Vrina asked Thorva if she's coming with them, Thorva replied no, and she started marching towards the figure. After she left, Brokvar Ironfist, another member of the raid, insisted that they had to go after her. The gods would bring ruin upon them if anything happened to their shamanka. Brokvar was an iceborn, and so he wielded the legendary blade called Winter's Wail, a weapon used with true ice, which...
It's a cool looking sword. Not this, the sword itself doesn't look too cool. Like the engraving on it looks really nice though.
Which means that no one, not even Vrina, besides the Iceborn could wield it. To anyone else, it would bring insufferable pain. Vrina herself wasn't superstitious, but some of her warriors, including Brokvar, were, and so, against her better judgment, Vrina signaled the raiding party to follow Thorva. As the raid kept following the stranger, Vrina realized more and more how unprepared they were for the frozen tundra. Had she rode away, that stranger would die within an hour. As Thorva got closer to the outsider, she noticed it was a man wrapped in furs that carried no weapons. There was only a pair of chains attached to a curious design clamped around his wrists. The story then shifted to the perspective of Sylas of Dragborn. Sylas underestimated the sheer hostility of the Freljordian landscape. He knew there was great magical power in the north.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna be nice, warm and cozy. wearing this. Oh, he's covered with fur. Is he though? Is he really? He has to show off his abs before he gets covered, right?
And now he could practically feel it in his bones. But it still seemed like a mistake to come here. He had a dozen hand-picked mages with him on this expedition, but they had all fallen one by one, claimed by the blizzard and the savage beasts. He thought the barbarians would be the main threat, but Sylas hadn't seen a single living soul in weeks. And it's not like they came here unprepared. They had plenty of furs, food, weapons, and stolen Demacian coin to spare. They even brought a furred oxen with them, but none of it withstood the harsh climate. Only Sylas remained by sheer force of will. Here we learned that Sylas learned about the ancient magic of the North from one of the books Lux brought him to his cell, when he was still a Demacian prisoner. And unfortunately, he was stubborn enough to follow that power. But his stubbornness wasn't enough to overcome the cold.
Yeah.
He was approaching his limits, as his hands and toes started turning black.
Oh,
Sometimes
fuck.
he saw a column of riders in the distance, but he wasn't sure if he imagined it. He knew that to stop was to die, so he kept marching until his body finally gave up, and he fell face first into the snow. Thorva shook her head as she
Telemarketers
saw
gotta
the
love
outside
it.
fall, and she urged her Druvask
Go away.
as she approached Sylas, she had a chance to inspect him. Once again, she wondered about the chains. If he was a prisoner, where did he escape from? The Avarosans wouldn't chain someone this way, so he had to come from over the distant mountains in the south. Thorva grabbed her staff with both hands and she used it to leverage Sylas and turn him over. It was a difficult task since Sylas's shackles were incredibly heavy. And again, Thorva inspected the chains. She had traveled across the entire Freljord, but she had never seen a white stone similar to the shackles. There was something unsettling about it. And when she realized that the chains were made in a way so that they could never be removed, it became clear the man must have committed a terrible crime. As Thorva knelt there in the snow beside Sylas,
Terrible
she
crime.
wondered why had she been guided here. The gods had clearly brought her here, just as they had directed her in the past.
More interested, like, why is he walking alone? For someone who's like championing this rebellion and stuff like that, he seems pretty fucking lonely. Like no one actually like follows him around, right? It's like he's just looking for the next aggressive move to make. It's not so much that like no one follows him. It's more like that he doesn't want people close to him as well, right? Where's that kid that with the rite of passage that killed the Highman or whatever it was called, right? Where's that kid? Why is he not following him? Right? No one follows Sylas because no one is really as adamant about what he's doing as Sylas. Like Sylas is like on a whole other level of aggression towards Demacia, even though he probably didn't suffer as much as others have. He's just that he saw the hypocrisy firsthand and probably like pissed him off the most. But like I said, like I feel like he's becoming more and more evil, and he's using any excuse to be evil. It was just a perfect excuse to have the whole rebellion thing, like the perfect excuse with hypocrisy to be evil, right? I do feel like he will be more and more and more and more and more evil as time goes on. If you look at the cinematic, his facial expressions are really like he's enjoying this, you know, he's enjoying inflicting pain, right? It's not like he's fighting for a good cause and he's like, fuck, man, like it sucks that I have to kill so many people. It's more like, good, I get to kill a lot of people. This cause is just, you know, kind of thing.
But she didn't know why. Was she meant to save the dying man before her? Or was the thing the man brought with him important? She quickly made her decision, and she reached for the bonds. But before she was even able to touch the pale stone, her fingers began to tingle, and Sylas's eyes snapped open. Thorva tried to summon her god-given powers, but as Sylas grabbed her arm, she felt those powers being drained from her. Her body suddenly felt cold, a sensation which she hadn't felt in years, and she fell, unable to breathe or move or do anything. As the cold took her, she saw colors return to the stranger's face, as if he was warmed by hearth. There was a hint of a smile on his lips, as he thanked her. Vrina cursed as she saw the shamanka fall, and with her roar, the raiding party moved forward.
Yep.
The ground was now shaking beneath the thundering charge, with the sound of an avalanche.
That's what I mean, like
Vrina saw the outsider kneeling beside Thorva. and she was surprised to see the man took off his fur to drape it over the fallen shamanka.
Mm-hmm.
It was a strangely kind gesture. Sylas then stood and faced the earth-shaking approach. Seeing the force that was now charging towards him, he stepped away from the fallen shamanka, and he held his hands up to show he bore no weapons. But Vrina didn't care. Without a signal, Vrina's warriors fanned out to encircle him. As Sylas's gaze darted between the riders, he showed no fear. But what was even more curious, he threw away his fur, and yet he didn't seem to feel the cold.
Yeah.
Vrina ordered one of her riders to approach the fallen shamanka. Then she introduced herself. The man in front of her just cocked his head to one side, and he responded in a tongue she could not understand. Vrina cursed.
Matlanki.
"You don't understand me, do you?" she asked. And again, the man gave her a questioning look. "Sylas," he replied, tapping his chest. Vrina understood that was probably his name. The warrior attending the shamanka confirmed that she was half frozen, but she wasn't dead yet. This made the riders confused. The Sisters of Frost were supposed to be immune to the cold. That was their gift from the old gods. But now, Thorva was freezing while the stranger stood before them with bare skin. All Vrina trusted was steel, fire and blood, but she knew her warriors would see this as some kind of omen. Sylas then shouted something in his tongue again, but Vrina ignored it. She would rather kill this fool quickly. But before she could do anything, Brokvar interrupted her. He offered to kill the stranger himself. The outsider killed their shamanka. It would be an honor to punish the man. Vrina raised her eyebrow, and with a shrug, she let him have his way. And so Brokvar dropped off his mount, and he marched towards Sylas with the legendary Winter's Wail in his hands. The story then cuts to one of Thorva's memories, specifically to one where she was 6 years old. That was the last time she had truly felt the cold. She was chasing a snow hare out onto a frozen lake. She was laughing, until she realized that the ice beneath her started to crack. Moments later, she plunged into the icy black depths. The bone-chilling cold drove all air from her lungs, and her limbs stiffened in agonizing cramps. She died that day, and she stayed dead for long minutes, before her tribe's shaman pulled her out and poured life back into her. She first manifested her gods-given power that night. The shaman told young Thorva that sometimes those who were brought back from the realm beyond change. Realm beyond being capitalized. And it seemed like the gods have decided to bless Thorva. In the days that followed, Thorva found herself impervious to cold, being able to walk through freezing blizzards bare-skinned with no ill effect. That was the past. But now, Thorva once again found herself sinking into the cold. Only this time, there wasn't anyone who could pull her back up.
Yeah, she was the shaman.
Slowly left her. She wondered, why was she brought here? Was her purpose to give her life to the outsider, so that they could fulfill the god's task? Suddenly she felt fear.
It's, man, I hate going into such things where it's like life's purpose and fate and all that stuff, because it is a never-ending cycle and so fucked up. And it's like, it's just a justification for what happened, right? It's like, it feels like you're putting responsibility on something else other than yourself, kind of thing. It's like, you chose to follow him. You didn't have to follow him. No one forced you. Maybe compelled you, sure, but it's like, you didn't have to follow him, you know?
That slowed her descent into the darkness. Even if the gods wanted the outsider to take her place, Thorva knew that Vrina wouldn't allow them to live. And so, Thorva began to fight back towards the surface. Meanwhile, Brokvar Iron Fist went straight for the killing blow, Winter's Wail hissing through the air. That blow would have split an ice troll in half. But Sylas was surprisingly quick, even with his massive shackles. He stepped back and whipped his chains at Brokvar, barely missing him as the Iceborne warrior snarled in fury. Brokvar was exceptionally fast for such a big man, and he was able to land a powerful backhand punch across the side of Sylas's head. A punch that sent him flying. Sylas struggled to get himself off the ground as Brokvar marched toward him.
I love that, like, these characters were like nobodies are just like, are so strong. It's like that. It's a good thing, because that means you're gonna have some really serious elite zones in the MMO where you're like, you need parties and shit like that, and it would be justified.
He regained his footing, which actually impressed Vrina. But still, Vrina knew he was just delaying the inevitable outcome. As the enemy approached, Sylas focused on the barbarian's weapon. A pale ice shard in its hilt was glowing brightly. Its magic was primal and dangerous, unlike anything he had seen before. It was almost intoxicating. With a roar, Sylas lashed his chains at Brokvar in a flurry of arcs. One of the swings hit Brokvar's head, and his helmet was torn off. Brokvar shook his long hair loose, spat blood into the snow, and continued his advance. The next time the chains flew at him, Brokvar let them whip around his massive forearm, and he grabbed the metal links to pull Sylas right into his swinging elbow. The hit brought Sylas to the ground again.
Again.
The Iceborn warrior was ready to deliver the killing blow with his blade.
But then...
That's when a voice interrupted them, and Brokvar paused. Vrina looked around to see the Sister of Frost, Thorva, pale and at the brink of death, leaning on her staff and shuffling through the snow. To everyone present, this was madness, but Thorva called it the will of gods. While the barbarian was distracted, Sylas seized his chance. He quickly whipped his chains around his opponent's weapon, and he tore it from the man's grasp. It landed in the snow nearby, and Sylas quickly leapt after it. With a wide grin, Sylas picked up the broadsword, and agony seared through him.
Oh.
Vrina shook her head at the fool. After all, only an Iceborn could hold a true ice weapon. For anyone else, it was a death sentence. Sylas released the weapon from his grip and he dropped to his knees. His limbs started to freeze. It began with his hand, but it steadily moved its way down his arm and towards his heart. Vrina laughed and she asked if this was supposed to be the will of gods. Brokvar picked up Winter's Wail without harm, and Sylas stared at him in anguish and confusion. Vrina told Brokvar to put him out of his misery, but Brokvar first looked towards their shamanka for approval. She replied that if the gods want him saved, they will intervene. Thorva served the old gods of Freljord, but she didn't claim to know their will.
True.
Nor had she often seen them intervene directly in mortal matters. And yet, what happened next seemed to be impossible to be a pure coincidence. Sylas was dying, but even in death his will to fight was strong. He was on the ground, shivering like the lesser-born of Demacia, and the thought of that alone ignited anger that now fueled him. And with his last burst of dying breath, he sprang off the ground and grabbed the Freljordian warrior around his throat. Ancient raw elemental magic instantly began to infuse him.
Yeah.
Sylas may have been unable to hold the true ice weapon, but he could still draw from its power, using the barbarian's flesh as its conduit. A moment later, the barbarian staggered back, unsure of what just happened. Sylas's eyes now glue with icy pale light, and with his newfound power, he was able to reverse the creeping ice on his arm, and it now crept away until it was fully gone. Then he turned back towards the barbarian. At this point, everyone present stared at Sylas in awe. Vrina wondered if he was also an Iceborn, but Thorva explained that he is something else. Vrina had enough, however. She stood up in her...
He's a magic sucker. Just sucks essences of people.
And she threw her spear with all her might.
Yeah.
With a simple gesture of his hand, Sylas summoned a wall of ice that blocked the spear.
Yep.
And then it collapsed moments later. After that, Sylas started laughing as he was getting ready to unleash what these icy powers were truly capable of. But as a spinning orb of magic gathered between his hands, the shamanka shouted something Vrina couldn't understand. To her surprise, the shamanka spoke the language of the stranger. Thorva and Sylas talked for a while, until Vrina lost her patience and she demanded to know what was happening. Thorva translated that according to Sylas, they shared a common enemy. Not the Avarosans, but his own people, the Demacians across the mountains. Vrina snapped back that he is a traitor then. Why would they even trust a traitor? And that's when Sylas made his offer. He knew about hidden pathways into his homeland, places that flow with gold and silver, fields untouched by snow. It didn't sound like much, but these riches were what the Winter's Claw raided for. And yet, there was some doubt. Vrina wasn't sure if he was telling the truth, but that's when Thorva convinced her with a lie. Thorva said that Sylas had a vision, a dream about 3 Freljordian sisters. They urged him to come here. Brokvar immediately took the bait, and he exclaimed that the 3 sisters must be Avarosa, Sorilda, and Lysandra. After that, wonder spread throughout the rest of the warriors, as the legends of the 3 sisters were well known across the north. And yet, Vrina still remained skeptical. It seemed like she was suspecting a lie, so she ordered that Sylas had to prove himself first. He will come with them on their raid. If he fights well, they will listen to more of what he has to say. But Vrina made sure that everyone knows that Sylas would be Thorva's responsibility. She will have to control him, and she will answer for his potential crimes.
Okay.
Thorva then carefully looked Sylas up and down. He was handsome for a southerner, a little lean for her tastes, but he was clever, and there was...
He's not northern manly, you know, like big chest, a bit of a belly, hairy, you know, all that stuff. No, he was more of the aesthetic type.
Power in him. She then pointed at Sylas with the words, "Never touch me again." Sylas looked wryly and replied,
Fair enough.
"Not without your permission."
Oh,
Thor turned
damn.
away so he couldn't see her smile. She then told Rina that the stranger agrees to the terms. And so the group moved out to the raid. And that was the story that is about to begin a new chapter in the world of League of Legends.
So this is like shortly before Warriors, I'm assuming.
Things to note here. First of all, obviously Sylas will probably get his alliance with the Winter's Claw,
yep.
and together they will move south to fight against Demacia.
Yep.
But there are far too many possible outcomes to even guess what is going to happen. It is possible that Sylas will abandon them.
There's the sword.
He will continue marching north, because after all, he is there to find the great Nordic power. Meanwhile, I just want to see Galio empowered by true ice in a full-out war.
Oh, there it
also,
is.
Thorva and Sylas might get together. But knowing how slick Sylas is, I'm going to predict that he will kill Thorva for her powers in the end. The second interesting thing is...
I said, I'm not the only one who thinks Sylas is evil.
the languages. I wonder how many regions have different languages. Because up until now...
I feel like the language barrier is cool for like world building and immersion, but I really hope they don't have any language barrier in the game. Like between races and stuff like that. It's just going to be such a pain in the ass. I mean, you can do it good, sure, but it's just such a pain in the ass to... First of all, you have to create the language, which is like... might be fun for some people who love doing that stuff, but it's like it can be really fucking annoying. Like look at even WoW. It's like no one cares that there are different languages. Some people even know the Blood Elf language, you know? It's like they actually like translate sentences of Blood Elves. They literally learned the Blood Elf language from an in-game language that was created. I don't even know if it was like completely created or it was kind of copied from an ancient civilization. But yeah, it's like messed up. It's too much.
Two champions not understanding each other. I mean, when Olaf was in Bilgewater, he was able to speak with the local fishermen. So Freljord and Bilgewater might have the same language. But then Lucian visited Bilgewater, and
they talk the same.
And what about when Jax met Fiora?
Yeah.
Also, Talia was just a child, and still she traveled from Shurima to Noxus to Ionia, and she never had a problem with communication. And don't get me started on in-game interactions; those shouldn't make sense at all.
That's it's too much. Like it's too much to keep it going. It's like it just starts conflicting at some point, and you don't want to say like, oh, they didn't understand each other, they got interpreter or something like that. Like with every interaction between each zone, like it's between each zone's characters, it's just too much.
Understand each other. So this is yet another proof that the in-game interactions shouldn't be taken seriously. I don't know. I just hope they won't cause any new plot holes. God knows.
I would honestly say we can just use that's like those guys who are like just a tribe or whatever. Maybe they have a different language, but like not everyone.
They just fixed a lot of them.
Yeah.
Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts?
I did not.
Links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you. Come again.
Silly hat. Nice what's his name, John Travolta imitation. Anyways, okay, so this is like how Sylas built his alliance with the Freljordian. So I'm assuming this is going to lead into that.
Well,
when's this? January 10. Yeah, so this is like 2 days afterwards. Okay, so we're just gonna watch that then. Let's go.